Welcome to the Van Answer Studio. Today I want to show you how to create a stuffed bubble version of the balloon hoop pillar. This is a stunning and super easy way to build a balloon column. This all starts with a 5-foot tall metal hoop stand, and I'll leave the ones that I purchased linked in the description box below so you can make this exact design as well. The topmost metal hoop of this stand is 14 inches in diameter, and we need to pick a balloon that's slightly larger than that to completely fill that hoop. So I'm using a 17-inch balloon that I'm going to fill till it's nearly its full size. Then I'm going to let a little air out until this balloon just fits on the inside of that 14-inch hoop. By stretching the balloon in this way, it'll make the balloon nice and round. Now I want to orient the balloon so that the nozzles of the balloon are where the two metal hoops meet, and that'll make it much easier to hide the nozzle later on. You can see there's a little bit of a gap between the edges of my balloon and that metal hoop, so I'm going to take a hand pump and add just a little bit more air until the balloon is touching the entire inside edge of that metal hoop. Then I'm going to tie the nozzle off in a knot, and you can either leave the nozzle there or you can tuck it between the balloon and the metal hoop to hide it away. I'm going to leave mine out since I'll be covering this entire section with florals later on. I'm going to skip down to the second 14-inch hoop and repeat this process with another 17-inch lavender balloon. The largest hoop of this stand is 21 inches in diameter, and I'll be using a 24-inch Sempertex balloon. Now, Sempertex balloons are really stretchy and very round. For comparison, this is a 24-inch Tuftex Monet balloon, but when it's inflated to this size, it's more of a pear shape than a sphere, so that balloon won't be large enough to fill the entire 21-inch metal hoop. So if the balloon brand and color won't stretch far enough for the design you want to make, you will have to step up to a 36-inch balloon to fill this largest metal hoop. Because my Sempertex balloon is stretchy and more spherical in shape, I am able to use the 24-inch balloon for this bottom hoop. Once the balloon is about 21 inches in diameter, I'm going to nestle it inside the metal hoop, making sure it's nice and centered and the nozzle is pointing up to where those two metal hoops meet. This will make it easier to add more air using the hand pump, but you could also point the nozzle down where it'll be easily hidden from view. If there are any parts of the balloon that aren't touching the inside edge of the metal hoop, you can add just a little bit more air with the hand pump and then tie the nozzle off in a knot. With all of our latex balloons in place, we can now move on to our special stuffed bubble section. I'm using a 24-inch clear bobo balloon, but you could also use a 20-inch balloon as well. First, we need to pre-stretch the balloon, so I'm going to inflate it till it's nearly its full size and check to make sure it's nice and spherical. Sometimes these balloons are a little oblong, so if you press on the long side of the balloon against a table and roll it back and forth, you can press the bubble into a more spherical shape. Once you're happy with the shape of your bubble balloon, let all the air out. To make the bubble easier to stuff, I'm going to trim the nozzle down to about 2 inches in length and stretch the nozzle out wider. Pull sideways on the material section of the nozzle and not along the seam. If you put too much stress on that seam, it might pop open and ruin your bubble in the process. I'll be stuffing my bubble with this iridescent foil snowflake. I chose this one in particular because it comes flat and then you can fan it open to create the snowflake. I also chose it because it's made from a flexible foil material and not a cardstock, so we can roll this up and fit it through the nozzle of the bubble balloon. Each snowflake comes with a loop of fishing line already attached to the snowflake, but it's a little on the short side, and I want to make sure I don't accidentally let go of that fishing line while I'm trying to get the snowflake into the bubble. So I'm tying on a couple inches of curling ribbon to the end of that loop, that way it's easier to hold onto and see. Before I stuff the snowflake into the bubble, I'm going to completely open it and attach the Velcro ends to make sure that the snowflake will actually open and function properly and it's not all stuck together from the manufacturing process. Once it seems like the snowflake is working properly, I'm going to fold it back up in preparation for stuffing it into the bubble. To help make the stuffing process easier, I'm going to use a spreader tool to hold the nozzle of the bubble open. Gather the entire nozzle up onto the tongs of the spreader tool so that the end of those tongs is into the main body of the bubble. Then squeeze the handle to open the nozzle nice and wide. Roll the cut edges of the snowflake up so it looks like a skinny burrito. Then we're going to insert the center of that snowflake into the bubble first. Gently wiggle the snowflake back and forth until it gets all the way through the nozzle section. It may get a little stuck because it's plastic on plastic, but try and keep that nozzle spread nice and wide and continue to jiggle the snowflake back and forth. Once you get near the end of the snowflake, make sure you have a good hold on the fishing line or that curling ribbon tail so that it doesn't go all the way into the bubble as well. Now it's time to fan open the snowflake. So I'm going to take the ends of the snowflake and open them around the rings, the center of the snowflake, so that those two pieces of Velcro come around and touch each other. Now this may be a tiny bit fiddly because we're basically opening it through the bubble, but it is possible. A couple tips to help you through this process is to gather up a large section of the bubble, grab the tip of the snowflake, and then pull it down towards the center of the snowflake. Then gather up a little bit more bubble and repeat this process. The main thing is you have to get the edges of the snowflake to hinge around those rings of the center of the snowflake. If you need a bit more working room, you can always add air to the bubble, stretch it out, fluff around the snowflake a little bit to shake it up, and then press your fingers in to grab the section of the snowflake that you need to move. Once the snowflake is completely open, Velcro the two ends together, inflate the bubble one last time, and then we'll move back over to the hoop stand. This final hoop is 17 inches in diameter. I'm going to place the bubble into it, making sure the seam of the bubble is in line with the metal hoop stand, and that way it'll be hidden from sight. Then I'm going to press the bubble into this hoop and slowly let air out until it just fits through. Now you can always use a hand pump to add a little bit more air to make sure everything has a nice snug fit. It's critical that the nozzle of this bubble is pointing directly up, and that way our snowflake will hang nice and straight. Twist the nozzle of the bubble a couple times to hold the air in, and if your snowflake isn't pointing the direction you want, now's the time to kind of rotate the fishing line around so it generally faces the front of the design, but know that the snowflake can spin freely inside the bubble. To seal the bubble, I'm going to take an empty 260 balloon and wrap it tightly around the nozzle of the bubble, pulling one tail of that 260 around a couple times nice and tight, and then grab the other end of that 260, pull it tight and wrap it in the opposite direction. This will ensure that we get a nice tight seal and then tie the ends of that 260 in a double knot. You can either leave the tail ends of this 260 balloon long as a way to tie florals to this bubble balloon, or you can take a pair of scissors and trim them nice and short, as well as the curling ribbon that's attached to the top of the fishing line. Next, I'm going to make a couple faux floral arrangements that hug the balloons right where each of those metal hoops meet. I'll be attaching the florals to the stand using these sparkly pipe cleaners. That way they'll blend in with all of my white florals. I'm going to arrange my floral pieces so that they hug the metal frame and give this bottom section a nice S curve. All of my florals are this sparkly white color, so I'm using lots of textures and shapes to give the florals visual interest. Once I have a couple branches twisted together, I want to make sure I'm covering any wire ends that might be sharp with a few pieces of white gaff tape. That way I don't accidentally pop my balloons while adding the florals to the design. Next, I'm going to attach this bunch of florals by pressing it against the metal stand and twisting the pipe cleaner around the stems of that bunch. Now I noticed that the top side of my bunch is just flopping outward, so I added another pipe cleaner about halfway up the purple balloon, and I'll use that to secure the upper section of my florals. I'm going to make a similar looking bunch of florals and have this one cascading down the opposite side of the stand, so I get this beautiful S curve near the bottom of my design. I added a few florals right in the center to hide all the stems and make this section of florals look like a continuous piece. I tied together two little stems between the bubble and the purple balloon before moving up to the joint between the top two most hoops and creating a similar arrangement to the first one I made on the lower balloon. To camouflage the base of this stand, I'm going to cover it with this fluffy white throw blanket, taking care to drape it all the way around so the metal is completely covered and the outside edge of the blanket has a nice circular shape. And now this beautiful hoop pillar is ready for a party or event. This can stand alone as a singular piece, or you could pair it up with a matching design and create a demi-arch. If you enjoyed this project, you should check out this video. And until the next time, remember, stay creative, everybody!